everybody at Grove Infants, this is Mrs Dyckhoff here. I am sitting at the moment in my new summer house. I was very busy over Easter holidays and this is what I built. I'd set myself a challenge because I'd never built anything like this before, but I did it. Took me a long time, but I enjoyed doing it. Anyway, it is now a really special place where I can come and have some quiet time and read some stories. I love books and I thought it'd be a good idea for me to read you a book. Now I've chosen a book for two reasons. One, because in year one we've been doing lots about learning about plants, and also we've been doing stories that are traditional stories and finding alternative versions of them. So this book combines the two. It's Mr Nosey and the Beanstalk. Now, which traditional story has a beanstalk in it? And also a beanstalk is a plant. Because what I've noticed is my plants in my garden are suddenly growing really quickly. I think it's got something to do with the nice weather we've been having. Anyway, sit back and I'll start reading the story. So, better introduce Mr Nosey to you for people who don't know. Mr Nosey is one of those people who is curious about everything. If he comes across, let's say, a parcel, here's him holding his parcel, and I've got a parcel here, he'll start to wonder what's inside. And the more curious he becomes, the more he has to know. And even if it's addressed to someone else, in other words, not to him, let's see who this is addressed to. This says to Mr Happy. He can't stop himself from wanting to go inside. Now, do you think Mr Nosey would open this parcel? I think he would. Do you think Mrs Dyckhoff would? No, I wouldn't. But he would have to have a look inside. His curiosity always gets the better of him. So this is a story about something like that. One day, Mr Nosey was out on a walk when he met, who do you think he might meet? A wizard! And the wizard was holding a small bag. The wizard told him that it was a bag full of magic beans. Mr Nosey had to know what was magic about them. Well, I will give you one bean, said the wizard. And if you take it home and plant it, you will find out. But that is if you're sure that you want to find out. What a silly question. Of course Mr Nosey was sure he wanted to find out. So, at home, Mr Nosey planted the bean into his garden. The next morning, he couldn't believe his eyes. There, in the middle of his garden, was a giant, do you know what it is? Beanstalk that stretched right up to the sky. As Mr Nosey admired the beanstalk, a thought occurred to him. What could be at the top of the beanstalk? The more he thought, the more curious he became. And the more curious he became, the more he had to know. So guess what he did? He began to climb all the way up. He climbed. Let me show you him climbing. And he climbed even more. And he climbed right up into the clouds. And when he reached the top, he could not believe his eyes. Well, for the second time that day. There in the clouds was a giant castle. let me show you the giant castle. And then a thought occurred to him. Who might live in a castle in the clouds? Do you know? And the thought grew into curiosity, and the curiosity got the better of him. So he set out across the clouds to the castle. The giant castle had a giant door, and the giant door, there was a giant keyhole. Mr Nosy cannot pass a keyhole and resists the urge to have a peek. And this time is no different, except that this time it was different because Mr Nosy could fit through the keyhole. Let me show you. Oh, it's the same size as him. Do you think Mr Nosy will keep just looking, peeking? Or do you think he might? Yes, you're right. He goes inside. And it quickly becomes apparent that the who lived in the castle is a giant. Now look, see how he spotted it was a giant. It's because of those massive boots. Now you and I would have sensibly left as fast as we could. In fact, we would not have even probably been there in the first place. But Mr Nosy, as you can guess, could not resist having a look around. Mr Nosy went into the giant's kitchen, and in the corner there were 3 cupboards. Of course, Mr Nosy had to know what was inside them. He opened the first cupboard, and inside there was a small bag. But before he could look inside the bag, he heard a terrifying sound. Thump, thump, thump. It was the thud of the giant's heavy booted footsteps somewhere in the castle, and they were getting closer. Mr Nosy grabbed the bag, scrambled through the keyhole and slithered down the beanstalk as fast as he could. Safely back at home, he discovered that the bag was full of, can you guess? Let me make this noise. Ooh, what do you think that is? It was full of, did you guess? Gold coins. That night, he could not sleep. He lay in bed thinking about the other 2 cupboards. What could they contain? Let's look at him there in bed thinking. He just had to know. Guess what he's going to do? Early the next morning, he went back at the beanstalk, back through the keyhole and back to the second cupboard in the giant kitchen. Looked inside. Inside, do you know, it was a hen. That's curious, thought Mr Nosy to himself. Not for the first time in this story. He picked up the hen, and there, do you know what was there? There was a golden egg. A hen that lays golden eggs, murmured Mr Nosy. I'll need to take this home for a closer look. Just then, Mr Nosy heard the heavy boots of the giant coming down the stairs. Thump, thump, thump. Mr Nosy tucked the hen under his arm and ran for his life. The hen fascinated Mr Nosy, but it did not stop him thinking about the 3rd cupboard. He was terrified of the giant, but his curiosity overcame his fear, and so, the following morning, back to the giant's kitchen he went. He opened the 3rd third cupboard, and in it, do you know? What do you think? It's golden. It was a golden harp, and the golden harp was singing. Mr. Nosy sat and listened to the harp. He felt safe because he thought he would be able to hear the giant approach because of his heavy-footed boots. But the giant was wearing slippers this morning, and that is how he caught Mr. Nosy. "So you're a thief," boomed the giant. "I have a mind to grind your bones to make my bread." Mr. Nosy's eyes nearly popped out of his head. "But I won't," continued the giant. "I prefer cornflakes for breakfast. Now, I know what to do with you. Since you are so interested in what's in my cupboards, you can clean them." And Mr. Nosy did. It took him 3 days. Giant's cupboards are, well, giant. "So, now let that be a lesson to you," said the giant. Let me show you a picture of him cleaning the cupboards. There we go. And you think it would have taught him a lesson, but the very next day Mr. Nosy came upon an empty house, and the front door was open, and on the kitchen table were 3 bowls of porridge. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Can you think of whose house that might be? What do you think Mr. Nosy's going to do? But look what this story says. But that's another story. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that story. I enjoyed reading it, and I think some of the other teachers might be reading some stories to you over the next couple of weeks. So, and hopefully I'll be able to read another story to you soon. So, bye-bye, Grove Infants. I'll see you soon. Bye.